Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europari di Viva. Today, I'd like to talk about the Lawfare process that is very prominent in Romania as an instrument of political control. And I'd like to start from a statement made by the mayor of Bucharest, Ciprian Ciucu, who has been in office for less than 2 years. He has been in office for less than 1 year. And he made a very interesting statement regarding this lawfare process, also taking into consideration his background. So he's not exactly the type of person, he does not fit the political profile of a candidate or office holder which would be the target of the lawfare process in Romania right now. He used to be affiliated with various Soros people in Romania. So he was the assistant of Monica Macovei, who was the head of the Open Society Foundation in Romania, and he entered politics in her party. Monica Macovei was instrumental in creating the lawfare process in Romania after 2005, after she was appointed justice minister. So essentially after Traian Băsescu won his first term in the late fall of 2004, for the Ministry of Justice, guess who was appointed? The head of the Open Society Foundation in Romania. In order to create the legal architecture, the judicial architecture, that would allow the lawfare process to take place. So to replace the entire political class, as it was the case for the past 21 years, with people who are docile to the American agenda, who are just puppets without any backbone, without any personality of their own, without any character. And Ciprian Ciucu is one of these new characters. So he was affiliated with the lawfare process from the start. He had his own think tank, so he worked for the first think tank in Romania that was set up by the Open Society Foundation. It's called the Romanian Academic Society. He worked there just like I did as well 2 decades ago. And he broke loose, made up his own NGO, started receiving grants, these financial schemes from USAID, from the National Endowment for Democracy, from the European Commission, and so on. So he started receiving funds on his own NGO. And then he entered politics in the party of Monica Macovei, the architect of the lawfare process in Romania. And he's now accusing the very same lawfare process that he was an accomplice of. And I think he's right. I think he is indeed the victim of this lawfare process, because this is how it works. Just like the Stalinist Red Terror, the Stalinist purge, turned against the Bolsheviks, who had committed crimes against their political opponents 1 or 2 decades before, just like the Jacobins finally turned against each other after having purged their political opponents and after having beheaded them. The lawfare process in Romania is also turning against its architects, because first of all, they're no longer necessary, and second of all, they might be obstacles towards higher objectives. So I'm not sure to which extent Ciprian Ciucu understands the game that is played and why he indeed is being criminally investigated. His claim was that he should have never run for office, even though I think he was a rather good candidate for being the mayor of Bucharest. I've actually seen Nicusor Dan and Ciprian Ciucu head-to-head in 2016, so 10 years ago, trying to win the favors of the Romanian civil society. In the end, it was Nicusor Dan who became the candidate of the civil society in 2016, and this is when his party also entered parliament. But in that head-to-head presentation that I attended, Ciprian Ciucu, I would not say that he was better prepared. Ciprian Ciucu was prepared. Ciprian Ciucu knew a couple of things about local administration. He had done his homework, whereas Nicusor Dan came just blinking and just completely lost in space, saying that he had forgotten his homework at home, literally. So he didn't really present anything. He just said, like, if you have questions for me, but the people still preferred him for reasons that are unknown to me. I approached Ciprian Ciucu then. I told him that, of course, he's the better candidate, and I don't understand why everybody is so enamored with Nicusor Dan, because Nicusor Dan represents absolutely nothing. But this was how history unfolded. So Ciprian Ciucu eventually went on to become a local councillor from this party that is allegedly pro-European, even though it has a pro-American wing as well. And right now there is this clash between the pro-European and the pro-American agents, because the state budget needs to be robbed in the direction of public procurement programs. And some are necessary to keep the German economy afloat, and others are necessary to strengthen the hold of American servitude. So to allocate public money to all sorts of procurement contracts with United States corporations. And the president of Romania is on the pro-American line, and it is waging lawfare against the pro-European agents who are against various useless projects that are demanded by the Americans. I've spoken about them in previous episodes: the vertical corridor bringing in American LNG to Romania, quantum AI data centers, small modular reactors, on experimental nuclear technology. Of course, it's also the procurement contract with Pfizer that was part of this American scam, but that was run at the European level. And right now the pro-Europeans and the pro-Americans have to split sides, because there's not enough money to cater to both interests. And in order to make the pro-American side win, the lawfare mechanism, which was instigated for the Americans, is now being used against the pro-Europeans, and Ciprian Ciucu is one of its victims. Ciprian Ciucu essentially started his political mandate by denouncing the propaganda that the system operating around Nicusor Dan blurted out in the past years, that somehow, even though there's no public investment being made and Nicusor Dan has nothing to show during his tenure in office as mayor of Bucharest, the reason for this is not incompetence or, well, corruption, but the fact that Nicusor Dan is paying the historical debts of the municipality, which was a lie. It was a blatant lie. Nicusor Dan added to the historical debts of the municipality by his own behavior, by his own behavior of litigation against the public interest. I've described this in previous videos. So essentially he was refusing to execute court orders, and therefore he had the municipality financially liable for penalties, and also for legal fees and all sorts of other fines, because those court cases were impossible to win, but still he was litigational. He went to court to try to overturn final court decisions, or he was brought to court by the people who were the beneficiaries of those court decisions that he refused to enact. And as a consequence of this, not only did he not pay any historical debt, but he piled on some more debt, plus he didn't have a record to show that he did any kind of public investment. And actually I know why, because I was part of his early campaign, of his early bid for the mayor of Bucharest, and there was never any plan. So I tried to make a plan that was implementable. I tried to do research on actual issues, on actual urban policy that might be useful, but in the end he was not interested, and he was only interested in PR gimmicks, because the plan from the beginning was that he would win the position of mayor of Bucharest just to use it as a political trampoline to become president of Romania, which he did. So it was not necessary to actually deliver something to the constituents that voted for him, because they would vote for him anyway to become president of Romania, which happened. And which was not the case with Traian Băsescu. So Traian Băsescu was voted as president of Romania because he actually delivered on some things regarding the municipality. So he had one term before becoming president of Romania. And in that term, he did clear some problems that Romania had inherited from the 1990s and that were pretty bad. The problem with the stray dogs, the problem with kiosks that were built illegally on basically on the public domain and that littered the landscape everywhere. So he put a bit of order. He also made the plan to close the the middle traffic ring, I think it's called. So to try to divert traffic from the longitudinal axis to the radial axis. This is something that is part of the strategy of Bucharest to ease traffic pressure, to divert traffic into concentric circles, and the outermost circle would be a highway, rather than to have traffic pass through the center on a north-south and east-west axis. Anyway, so Nicusor Dan was not interested in such policies. He was interested in offering all sorts of contracts and positions in his administration to people from the so-called civil society who were praising him and who continued to praise him and who were incompetent for those positions. And he essentially secured the favors of the propaganda apparatus to support him in his presidential bid and to win the presidency without doing anything for the city. And Ciprian Ciucu inherited his position, noticed that Nicusor Dan did absolutely nothing for the city during his tenure. He spoke out against this. He said that he has no budget to do anything, and he will have no budget to do anything in the coming years as well. So he's basically with his hands tied behind his back. And because Ciprian Ciucu essentially denounced his predecessor, and because his predecessor now holds the reins to the system and can orchestrate these lawfare operations, then he became a victim of them, even though he should have known better when he was supporting them, when he was a sidekick of Monica Macovei's, and when he was an artisan of transforming the criminal justice system into a political weapon. He was supporting those things back then. Now when they apply to him, he no longer supports them. He says that the judiciary is politicized. Well, no kidding. But yeah, unfortunately, this is the fate of a nation of traitors which just fight for small, petty aims, who cannot think greater, who cannot develop a vision, a national consciousness, who just want to be petty traitors, petty instruments for the interests of some external powers. So, but it goes to say that Romania is this place where if you try to exercise your constitutional rights, like say running for office, it doesn't even matter if you're a sovereigntist or not. So okay, two years ago, the Romanian judiciary showed that if you're a sovereigntist and you try to run for office and you win, you get arrested. You get all sorts of criminal files on your name. You get accused of sedition, of orchestrating a coup d'etat, of being an extremist, running an extremist organization, and so on and so forth. But things have degraded to such a level that even if you're a pro-European and you win public office, you're still the victim of lawfare operations. And people like Dominic Fritz, the mayor of Timișoara, and Ciprian Ciucu, the mayor of Bucharest, whom I do not sympathize at all because of their political inclinations, but they do say something true. They do say that even if you're a pro-European, if you run for public office, you run the risk of being victim of these lawfare operations, just because there is a higher interest to be catered to, and that favors the Americans. And the lawfare system is created and operated through the NATO chain of command by the Americans, for the Americans, on behalf of the Americans. And thus, people like the pro-Europeans who were in favor of this system when it was operating against the sovereigntists now fall victim to this mechanism. So life is such, karma is a bitch. What can I say? But this is the sad reality. So we have this propaganda apparatus in Romania, which constantly says that we are a flourishing democracy, and who says otherwise is a puppet, is a Putin puppet, and an agent of Russia, and an agent of hybrid warfare. And we have rule of law, and whoever says otherwise is an agent of disinformation, an agent of the Kremlin, and so on and so forth. But that very same system of propaganda can no longer hide that the very same people that it promoted denounce the Romanian system as being, well, not democratic, not run according to the rule of law, not run according to the separations of the powers of the judiciary from the executive branch. And it is now all becoming a fiasco, essentially. So if you try to do your job as a politician, if you try to do your job as a journalist, if you try to become a civil society activist on your own right, so not just a USAID outlet, not just doing the dirty work of the Americans, of the CIA through these financing arms that it externalized. So the National Endowment of Democracy, the National Democratic Institute, the International Republican Institute, and so on. So if you just try to be a civic advocate for civic problems and to draw funding from the citizens, not from external sources, not from the US government, you run the risk of being a victim of lawfare. If you try to be an honest journalist and to report what's going on, you run the risk of being a victim of lawfare. If you just try to run for office because you try to improve how a city is run, which I have no idea about Dominic Fritz, but in the case of Ciprian Ciucu, I know it's true. So he does have a genuine motivation in that direction. He is genuinely motivated to an extent in improving the quality of life for the people of Bucharest. I think he even is from Bucharest, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he is from Bucharest. He's born and raised in Bucharest. And he does want to see this city improve, even though he did hold these Sorosist views in the past, and he was an acolyte of the foreign forces that are operating the inner workings of the Romanian state. But I do believe that in terms of being an administrator for the capital of Romania, I do think he has good intentions. I'm not sure to which extent I would agree with his paradigm of urban policy. I was not involved with his party. I read a bit what their previous candidate for the Bucharest City Hall wanted to do, and well, I was positively impressed because even though half of it was garbage, half of it was somewhat documented, and he did prove that at least somebody from his team had read the policy documents that Bucharest is actually running on. So I do think that his party does have some sort of administrative capacity, definitely better than that of Nicusor Dan's, who was an independent and who had no specialists. So I was the closest person to being a technical specialist in his whole team. And yeah, even if you just try to improve things without being a sovereigntist, without trying to align away from the geopolitical orientation that Romania currently holds or anything like this, you still run the risk of being a victim of lawfare, because this is how lawfare operates, and this is how the revolution eats its own children. In this case, it was not a revolution, it was a continuous coup d'etat, essentially a state capture by foreign agents. But in the end, they have to cannibalize each other as well, because there are these higher interests at play, higher imperatives. Right now they are geopolitical and they have to do with helping Ukraine. And so the people who do not agree with sacrificing the budget in that direction have to be sacrificed themselves, even though they might not want to rock the boat, or they might not believe that they are rocking the boat geopolitically. This is what I wanted to tell you about the sorry state of Romanian, well, hybrid regime. I wouldn't even call it a Romanian democracy anymore. And as I said previously, if you speak Romanian, follow my Substack. You can look up Europa Rediviva on Substack as well, and you'll find Romanian language posts and videos. And if you like what I do, like, share, subscribe, and until next time, take care.